Welcome back to the second session of the 2021 MB100 Forum, where we will discuss the crucial topic of scaling impact and hear from 4 of this year's winning entrepreneurs who are running businesses at different points in their growth. I'd like to welcome our moderator for this discussion, Payal Dalal, SVP Social Impact for the Mastercard Centre for Inclusive Growth, who will be joined by Alisée Tonnac, co-founder and CEO of Seedstars, Emily Ewell, the co-founder and CEO of Pantys, Nneka Mobisson, the co-founder and CEO of mDoc, and Szaky, the founder and CEO of TerraCycle. So over to you, Payal.
Thanks so much, Tom. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. And so delighted you're all here for this fantastic conversation. We have a tight agenda, so I'm going to dive straight into questions for our fantastic panelists. I want to start by establishing the baseline and really help the audience and me understand where these entrepreneurs are coming from. So could I ask each of you to give us kind of the 60-second pitch on what you and your social enterprise does? And Emily, I'm going to start with you.
Great to be with you all today. I'm Emily Ewell. I'm the founder and CEO of Pantys, the leading menstrual underwear brand in health and sustainability today. When we look globally, almost 1 trillion disposable pads are disposed every year. And we see that as a huge opportunity to bring more sustainability and help bring more affordability as well to the menstrual space. We're based in São Paulo, and we're currently the only clinically approved brand globally in collaboration with Johnson & Johnson. We're also a certified B Corporation and a pioneer in carbon labels. So not just looking at helping eliminate menstrual trash, but also creating very sustainable products with biodegradable fabrics and actually compensating and doing offset for entire life cycle of our products. Today, we have a very wide range of products, not just menstrual underwear, but also the first absorbent leak-proof nursing bra in the world, a swim line, a fitness line. So a lot of really interesting innovations in the women's health space, and excited to share with you some of our journey today.
Thanks so much, Emily. Looking forward to learning more. Tom, tell us about your social enterprise.
Absolutely, real pleasure to be here, and thank you everyone for inviting me. So TerraCycle is really I'd say unique waste management company. We operate in 20 countries around the world as a for-profit and 1 as a non-profit. And our mission is to eliminate the idea of waste. We have a number of business units to accomplish that. The first focuses on how do we collect and recycle hard to recycle materials, from dirty diapers to cigarette butts and hundreds of other non-recyclable materials in between. Our second focuses on how do we integrate waste back into products, have companies, from P&G and Unilever make their products from everything from ocean plastic to inner city waste and so on. And then finally, through our third division Loop, helping companies shift from disposable supply chains to reusable, ideally eliminating the need for recycling or landfilling or incineration whatsoever. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Tom. And I think I give you the award for having the best background of the
it's
panel
real.
with all of those pieces. Fantastic. Nneka, I would love to hear about your social enterprise.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm Nneka Mobisson, co-founder and CEO of mDoc. And it's a true pleasure to be with you all today and an honor to be one of the meaningful business winners this year. So if you look at Africa today, more than 28 million people have died prematurely and preventably over the last 10 years, really, from chronic diseases such as cancer, hypertension, obesity, diabetes, as well as coexisting mental health conditions. And so mDoc is a digital health social enterprise that leverages behavioral science, data, quality improvement methods, as well as technology to optimize the end-to-end self-care experience for people living with these chronic health needs. We're headquartered in Nigeria, and we provide virtual self-care health coaching to approximately 60,000 people today living with or at risk for any of these conditions, of which approximately 80% are women and majority make less than $3 a day. And so essentially in alignment with SDG 3, we're really working to leverage digital to support people in leveraging those lifestyle modifications that they need to lead to a measurable reduction in premature mortality and preventable mortality in Africa as we look forward. It's really exciting to be with you all today.
Fantastic. And I'm already seeing a number of themes across what each of you do. Alisée, tell us a little bit about your social enterprise.
Yes. Hi, everyone. A pleasure to be here. So at Seedstars, we really had a mission to have an impact in emerging markets. And I think our thesis was to kind of combine several trends between the true democratization of technology and a global rise of social entrepreneurs around the world. And so it's really been about figuring out where are the gaps and how we can fill them. And ultimately, today, we have kind of two main pillars. On one side, entrepreneurial education programs we're running right now in 20 countries around the world. And on the other side, figuring out what are the right investment vehicles to scale these these high growth ventures that will directly and indirectly impact citizens around the world.
Super, thank you. So I think there's some common threads across everything that you all talked about: circular economy, sustainability, inclusive digitization, democratization of technology, and indeed, democratization of opportunities and resources that support mental health and also excluded groups like women and girls. So really excited to hear all about what you're doing. And I want to get into your journey and how you built your business, what challenges you encountered, and what surprised you. We have a lot of participants today in this session who might be existing entrepreneurs, might be budding entrepreneurs. And so would love for you to share your journey, what you encountered, and what surprised you. And let's start with you, Nneka.
Yeah, I tell people I could write books just in terms of the challenges that we've had. I mean, the reality is running a digital health business in Africa, which started pre-COVID, it's been challenging to say the least, right? And I say pre-COVID because COVID upended the notion that digital could not work for health in Africa. And so, if I look at kind of all the several challenges that, we've had to deal with, three primary challenges really stand out. So, and they're really around talent, funding, and then digital ecosystems. And so from the talent perspective, the reality is we're working in places with weak healthcare systems and failed educational systems, as far as I'm concerned. And as a result, the talent pipeline across tech, clinical, data science, behavioral science, all these areas that we need, it's really weak and in some cases, non-existent. And so we've had to invest deeply in cultivating and building a flexible network of talent and resources in and out of mDoc, as well as really investing in retraining the mDoc workforce so that we can compete and function at the quality level that we believe will essentially drive the impact that we're looking for. But then unfortunately, we then lose these same folks to international organizations, including NGOs, or increasingly to other countries that are looking for that talent that we've invested in, such as doctors and nurses in the context of COVID. So that's really been our number one challenge. And then on the funding challenge, we've been deliberate about seeking blended finance and identifying like-minded funders who truly understand the complexity of healthcare in African countries. And the reality is we don't believe that there are tons of them out there. And so we've really been intentional around identifying these folks, and now we do have them, and they're willing to work with us for the long run. They understand the true meaning of patient capital. And so we're really fortunate to have their support today. Then the final challenge has been around digital literacy. I think we learned early on that mobile and smartphone penetration rates are not appropriate proxies for digital literacy. And so we've had to invest really in building digital literacy in the members that we serve. And that's placed, I will say, immense pressure on our system. We've had to leverage innovative, myriad approaches to really support. And we've seen the growth. We've seen that investment in digital literacy has unlocked health literacy, unlocked economic potential for so many people that we serve. But we realize that we have to do much more collaboration, work across the aisles so that other folks who also are interested in digital literacy, such as fintech companies, agri-tech companies, we're working together to ensure a much healthier and more productive population.
So interesting, and I have so many questions to follow up with you on, Nneka, but let me turn to Alisée to talk about some of the challenges you've encountered. Does what Nneka say resonate with you? Funding, talent retention, digitization and the rapid pace of acceleration of digitization. Tell us a little bit about your journey and what you encountered and what surprised you.
Yeah, completely. I think to avoid repeating, on our side, so looking from the investor lens is figuring out how we can support the scale up of our portfolio. And right now we have 80 companies really spread out across 40 countries, and we go into agriculture, healthcare, education, energy. And a lot in these markets is really about trying to figure out not only how do you educate the consumer base on paying online, all these complexities where the infrastructure is non-existent. So it's something that they have to kind of channel in and have to be able to integrate the whole supply chain, which is a whole other level of complexity. And so it's figuring out how do you provide that working capital? How do you integrate in that business model mechanism and where there is a strong monetization route and scale. So that definitely has been one of the priorities. And the other has been talent, not only as an investor seeing the limits of scale of some of our companies where they don't find that executive team locally, and then the arbitrage becomes complicated or the diaspora becomes very expensive. So you find yourself with a limited pool. And also as an organization that has an education social enterprise where we've had difficulty also kind of walking the talk of wanting to work with local talent, but finding ourselves also with a limitation depending on the regions. And so that's why our response to that was either you wait that miraculously this ecosystem matures on its own, either you be part of the ecosystem building. And that means accepting that you'll be investing up the funnel and going earlier and earlier. So we started by wanting to only invest. Then we're like, we need to start building entrepreneurial programs. And then we were kind of the type of accelerator type model. And now we're realizing actually we need to go in incubation and even earlier, like these type of forward-thinking coding schools where we start building very strong pipeline of not only future founders, but also entrepreneurs that will join these teams and help them scale. So that has been kind of, and you can imagine all the challenges that come with that, and figuring out how do you survive until there is that product market fit and an education level and also investment level.
Super interesting. And I think the added complexity of the great resignation is also kind of challenging all of us because, you know, people are reassessing what they want. And I think it's not only true in big corporates like Mastercard, but also in social enterprises. Emily, would love to hear about what resonated with you from what Alisée and Nneka talked about. What are some of the challenges you encountered and what surprised you on your journey?
No, absolutely. I think there's a lot of common themes. I think for us being a very product-focused business, it's a little bit different. You know, menstruation is a big taboo in most countries in the world still. And in the process of launching Pantys, we did a lot of focus groups with girls that are just at that age of the first menstruation, with the mothers of those girls that are, you know, and we see there's a huge disconnect, you know, even from generation to generation, there's not a lot of openness to discuss menstruation. And, you know, a lot of times what the mother gives to her daughter for her first menstruation is what she'll use for the rest of her life. So for us, really the biggest challenge is education and presenting new opportunities and new products that women can use, that girls can use, that are more sustainable, that are more comfortable, that even bring more security to them during their menstrual cycle. And I think, you know, it's amazing that in today's world that we're still using disposable menstrual products when they're amazing alternatives that are reusable. And, you know, I really believe that reusable products are going to help close the gap also in terms of menstrual poverty. So we're talking about affordability, we're talking about access, and even the logistics to, if you're working on, we do a lot of donation programs in Pantys, you know, the logistics of delivering disposables every month is a lot of times more expensive than the actual product. So I think the behavior change and, you know, whether, you know, obviously the rest of the panel also talked about new ways of working, new business models, but behavior change is really the secret in understanding how do you get in and, you know, inspire new ways of you know, of operating. And I think that social media for us has been a really powerful tool to get in and, you know, be a part of the community and be a part of that conversation. And I think what surprised us the most is the reaction to the product. If we look at, women don't ever really have an emotional connection with, a pad or a tampon. And we see that women say, I love my panties. It's like, it brings a new experience of what menstruation means. And a lot of people say, oh, I forgot that I was on my period. So that's really for us, the end game. That's the goal.
That's fantastic. And kind of keeping on that theme of sustainability and circular economy. Tom, let's talk about some of the challenges you've encountered in your work, and some of the surprises along the way.
Yeah, I would say, as I was hearing, the fellow panelists, just to add sort of a different perspective, our organization is very much dependent on funding from corporates. Examples could be facilities, but also retailers, brands. And what's interesting in the topic we focus on with waste and the transition from linear to a circular economy is that all these organizations, understand the issue, right? And the issue is getting bigger and louder. Folks are more angry, so on and so forth. And we used to early in our history approach organizations, more highlighting that there is a big problem. Your particular product, is not recyclable or not reusable. How do we help you on that? And sort of focusing in that point of view. And, we got some work, but we really relied on people who, were doing this quote because it's the right thing to do. And as we've, tried to scale, we're now close to 100 million in size. And the big break point that allowed us to get to that scale was reframing from entering the discussions with clients or potential clients around do the right thing messaging to here is how you win in whatever you care about, which could be as simple as more foot traffic, market share, these things that show up on KPIs and P&Ls. And you can do that by doing the right thing. It really fundamentally exploded the growth and decoupled us from having to find stakeholders who disproportionately cared about that topic and made it a passion project. In fact, today, when if you join our sales organization, one of the things we teach early on is that if your client tells you they're doing a recycling or reuse or whatever, program, because it's the right thing to do, it's actually a really bad sign because it means that they haven't found any other reason to do it other than the moral or ethical imperative. And then that means that you're dependent on that human being disproportionately championing that thing in their organization, which usually means a small amount of money for a short period of time. And when that champion moves off their desk, which everyone does all the time, and a new person comes in, who may be more P&L focused or maybe more traditional performance focused, your particular initiative's at massive jeopardy. Inversely, if it's core to their existence in growing, the things that, may not inspire you, like just more sales, then you don't, then it will grow and flourish on its own. And it's been the real sort of magic sauce. And it was a big discovery because I always hope that people would, would care about the same topics I care about. And I think it's really important for us to empathize with whoever we're trying to convince to care about our social or environmental topic, focus it from their point of view and see how, your idea can benefit their point of view versus get them to see the world from, from your point of view.
Thanks, Tom. And I think across all of these social enterprises, we've seen some very good common themes. Funding and sustainable funding. So that was what you were talking about, Tom, in terms of how do you create that sustainable source? And also, how do you understand your audience, whether it's your funders or your users? And in addition, of course, the talent issue, not only in terms of retention, but how do you quickly evolve in terms of the future of work and understanding the need to retrain and develop staff. And one thing that I didn't hear, so I'd be curious, maybe when we get to the Q&A, if this was a challenge, is, we've talked a lot about cash poverty and funding poverty, but what about time poverty? Because I do find with entrepreneurs, they have to be everything to everyone. And that becomes really difficult as organizations grow and scale. And so that brings me to the next set of questions, which I think is probably a shared challenge among all of you, which is that balance between scale and depth. And so, Tom, I want to start with you. How are you getting to scale responsibly? And do you think there's a trade-off between scale and depth?
Yes, absolutely. So clearly the goal, I think of all of our organizations is to make our impact as big as possible, which is, equal to scale, right? Now, I want to preface by saying there's nothing wrong with being a wonderful, stable organization. And I think in the context of business, whether purposeful or classic, whether nonprofit or for-profit, these are all just playing fields. It's always about growth, growth, growth. So just want to sort of honor for a moment, there's nothing wrong with being just wonderful at a certain stable size, right? But in the context of growth, what has helped us is really trying to do two things. Doing a laser focus on what is the one problem we're trying to solve. For us, our mission is to eliminate waste, so it's about waste. And we will really focus on that, but we're going to effectively do everything else traditionally. We're not going to sort of fight every battle simultaneously. We're going to let other wonderful organizations fight different questions. So in our world, you know, folks have asked, well, it's great you work with big food company X to recycle their whatever cereal bags, but why don't you have a position on the stuff they put in the bag itself? And it's our point as well, let's pick one battle, you know? And for us, that has led to, you know, we do work with, you know, just about anyone, you know, including, you know, sort of, you know, notorious actors like big tobacco or big oil, but only around how do we collect and recycle, say, lubricant containers or cigarette butts. Actually, just in the next month, we'll celebrate our billionth butt recycled. And so that's first, is that sort of center focus on the core mission, right? Because it also allows you to create domain expertise, credibility, and build an organization that can then really push those pieces. The second is as you're going to go for diversity, right? It could be geographic diversity. As mentioned, you know, we're in about 20 markets doing this. It could be business unit diversity, you know, trying to solve the same issue in different ways, you know, line extensions and so on. We really focus on how do we make sure everything maintains very, very similarly. So, you know, we really copy paste our playbook, you know, and it's almost identical in Japan to Brazil to, you know, the UK or the US, right? Versus trying to be hyper, you know, different or localized in each market. And it turns out in many topics, the issues are identical and they behave very, very similarly. But it's also then how do you make sure that the way you construct your models, if you're going to do more than one model around a core topic, how do they breathe similarly? So while our business units may look really different from the outside, from the inside, they're all identical. We have to collect waste, somehow process it, and then find a business model that works. So whether we're doing a reuse model or whether we're doing a recycling model, it's very little change behind the scenes and that allows us to stack scale without increasing complexity at the same time. And I think that's the punchline to all of it is, how do you not grow complexity linearly with growing scale? You need to grow, you know, for 10 units of scale, 1 unit of complexity.
I think that's a great takeaway. And I also love the thought of specialization and partnership as opposed to doing everything organically. Nneka, let's talk about your view in terms of how you scale responsibly and what the trade-offs you've seen between scale and depth have been in your world.
Yeah, I mean, if you know, when we first started mDoc, we envisioned literally all we were going to be doing was using digital to support people on lifestyle modifications. Right. And we quickly learned, because we co-designed with the communities that we serve, that we had to do more and that we didn't have that enabling ecosystem to enable us to actually hone in on what they needed. Right. So we literally we recognized early on that point I made about digital literacy. So we created community-based hubs in partnership, to your earlier point, with different organizations where people could walk in, meet with a coach in person, learn how to onboard onto our digital platform, as well as track their metrics in person because they can't afford the devices, you know, such as blood pressure machines or scales, et cetera. And then we learned that, you know, even though we support people the 99% of the time that they're out of a healthcare facility, that when they got to the healthcare facility, they were still getting poor care. And so we had to essentially create a directory of healthcare services, facilities, providers, where we could link them and refer them to places that were more likely to give quality care. And at the same time, start offering teleeducation to providers, to healthcare providers, so that when our members went to them, they were more likely to receive the right kind of care in the right manner at the right time all the time. So leveraging kind of that 4-pillar approach without question has slowed us down. In the early days, people used to say, mDoc, this is 4 companies. Why do you have 4 companies? But I think increasingly, I mean, we've seen kind of a shift change in how people look at it. They understand why we've had to kind of build this integrated end-to-end platform in partnership with, no doubt. But that's the only way that we're able to really drive the measurable impact that we've seen. And so by focusing on that co-design with communities, you know, who obviously are critical in ensuring product market fit, we've been slower, much slower than we wanted to, right? Because of that focus on iteration with the users, we created learning systems that would allow us to rapidly take what they were telling us what they needed, right? So that's what led to this omni-channel integrated service digital platform that truly meets people where they are. So you only want to talk to us on WhatsApp? No problem, we'll meet you there. You don't want to text, or you don't know how to write? No problem, we'll speak to you by phone and we'll call you, right? So that has added a whole layer of complexity in terms of even measurement, in terms of execution, et cetera. And it's slowed us down. But at the same time, we've been able to demonstrate the sustained, measurable, large-scale impact that we believe is really adding value to people's lives and allows us to achieve our mission, which is ensuring a healthier, happier, and more productive Africa.
Super, some really rich insights there, Nneka. You know, co-designing with community, the need to test, learn, and iterate, which is so critical. And so you have to balance the agility versus the speed. And one thing that came through that I want to put a fine point on is the need to blend tech and touch. Technology isn't the end all goal, right? It is a mechanism, but that in-person, you know, your community, your support organization, those are so critical to really create that behavior change that Emily was talking about. Alisée, what have you seen in terms of scaling responsibly and the trade-offs in your world when it comes to scale and depth?
Long topic. It's really, really tough because either you figure out quickly enough a product market fit where, as Tom mentioned, then you can start authentically scaling and you find yourselves in all the complexity of any company that needs to grow. Either you're still figuring out that product market fit and the trade-off is constant. And we've seen it in our education enterprise where it's not a B2C model. You can't push a product necessarily in the lower middle income classes. You have difficulty when it comes to B2B, B2G models of the constraints of them pushing their expectations and their pricing. And so I think one of the errors we had done in the past when thinking of scale is trying to diversify too much. So that lack of focus, which, you know, when you succeed, your diversification is your success model. When you don't, it's your failure model. So let's wait and see. But it's really something where you really need to figure out how to prioritize. And when you have to integrate impact in it, the framework of the typical, for example, companies using OKRs or things like that doesn't help you much because impact is a midterm, long-term consequence, especially in education. So figuring out that correlation and if your activities actually have a logic framework in which it does have an effect on that midterm, long-term impact is very difficult, not only to measure, but even to kind of measure in the short term. So one thing that we've done, and we're still in the process of experimenting on it, is we've linked our OKRs with what we found was best on the markets, the theory of change, but by its name theory, it's still a theory. But it was a way for us to structure our way to measure impact and align each activity with one of those kind of more midterm, long-term outcomes. And on top of that, there is seriously this conversation every year with our units. Are we going to have to, whilst figuring out the product market fit for education in these markets, are we going to have to prioritize profit, which at that stage is the survival of that of the team, so that they can incubate and experiment on new products that hopefully will become those gold mine or those elements that you can scale. So, and it's complexities we've seen in many of the businesses we've supported where the metrics are still not clear. The stakeholders are not willing to yet put a price on it. So it's, yeah, unfortunately, I wish I had a very clear answer and roadmap to impact at scale, but it's a complex subject, and we don't have a lot of benches around us yet that can also help us. So that's where we stand in that reflection.
No, I think that's great. And it ties to some of the points Nneka was making around the importance of iteration and really understanding kind of your product roadmap. I think it ties to what Tom was talking about. There's such potential for scope creep. So how do you stay disciplined? How do you stay focused? And then I think you raise a really important point that outcomes take a really long time and outputs are short term, right? And businesses tend to be, you know, if you look in the US context, right, you have quarterly earnings, right? And so there isn't an incentive to think about long-term growth when you need to report quarterly or half yearly. And so it really becomes challenging of how you balance your stakeholders who have certain expectations with knowing that you want to go beyond outputs to outcomes and impact. So really important point. Emily, I want to talk from your perspective about what you've seen when it comes to scaling responsibly and what the trade-off has been in your world.
Absolutely. I would say a lot of themes that have already been mentioned apply to us very strongly. I think even being a consumer business, our challenge is not operational. So it's not about sourcing, it's not about logistics, it's not about the actual product development. I would say it's a lot more about, and for any entrepreneurs here listening, I think the first thing is really uniting your business model with impact. I think that those should not be separate things. I think Tom mentioned this. It shouldn't be like a side project of someone who wants to do something good on the side. I think the impact needs to be entirely integrated into the business model. And that is the definition of a social enterprise. And I think how you measure results needs to not just be financial, but also social and environmental. So kind of like taking another dimension here and looking at, you know, financial, social, environmental, and actually having metrics behind that. And like, obviously outcomes are more in the long term, but you need to have metrics that you're tracking, you know, monthly, annually, that are also focused on these other areas. And I would say that the biggest challenge for us is not, is really focused on sustainability as a culture. And so I would say that the challenge is more around people. I mean, businesses at the end of the day, or companies or nonprofits are entirely built of people, and sustainability, there's no such thing as a 100% sustainable product or a sustainable company. Sustainability is a culture, it's a commitment to be continuously improving for the long term. And so in order to do that, you really have to take a lot of work in instilling a mindset in your entire team to be looking for opportunities, to be innovating in sustainability, and to be, you know, being able to push the needle forward in a lot of different ways. So for me, I see it as really a people challenge. And it's something that I hope with the team that we have, you know, how can we be instilling that mindset so that we're generating the biggest impact as a team together?
Terrific, terrific. So Alisée has invited questions from the audience. I see that we have one so far, and Nneka, this is directed to you. I'll start with you, and then if other panelists have contributions against this question, would love to hear it as well. But the question, Nneka, is interested to understand how you address the lack of IT infrastructure in communities, and how do you access people who need digital services the most when they're not part of the digital economy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so thank you for the question. This is our everyday reality. So if you look at, a typical mDoc member is a trader, what we call a market woman, someone working in the community, many of whom have come from the rural areas to the urban areas because they essentially are providing support, right, for their families back home in the rural areas. And they're one step away from being thrown into, poverty from the catastrophic burden of a poorly managed chronic disease. And so we've had to, when I say we've had to meet them where we are, we literally have what we call roving community ambassadors and these nudge hubs. So we initially started with nudge hubs, literally in partnership with community organizations, with faith-based organizations, so mosques, churches, setting up, literally, we were like, we just need a corner. We just need a little corner, or we just need the outside. And we have a coach there with a backpack who has some devices, has a phone, and literally we'll sit with you and take that time, if you have a phone, and support you in whatever way it is that you need, where we can best meet you where you are. That's my point earlier around WhatsApp Telegram, SMS, etc. At the same time, there are some people who don't have a phone, right? And so we've had to, I mean, to your earlier point, we've had to really leverage, you know, our theory of change is this fusion of digital nudges plus some level of face-to-face support, or when needed, really will catalyze the change, the preventative behavioral change that we need to drive measurable improvement in health. And so we use paper. We also have booklets. I mean, again, it's that point of that fusion to really meet people where they are, but then we invest in the time to support people, to teach them how to use the phone for their health, right? And it's not a one-off, it's continuous. So we just don't see that we have to engage with you. You have to have a personal digital interaction with us in the first 48 hours after interacting with a community ambassador or with one of our coaches, for you to believe that we are here to support you along the way, and for you to really understand how to use digital for health. So it's all these kind of different elements that we've had to leverage together, and that we've done truly in partnership with the community organizations in the areas that we serve, that have allowed us to, we believe, you know, catalyze kind of real improvements in digital literacy. We've seen improvements in self-efficacy, improvements in terms of digital skills, digital inclusion, and health literacy, and it's been linked to improvements in behavior change as well. But we're looking for partners who are willing to join us in this journey, or who are already doing this that we're not aware of, because at the end of the day, if we work together, we'll really build that enabling ecosystem for digital to succeed for all.
Terrific. So I'm going to add a corollary: blending tech, touch, and trust, because we really need to build trust. Tom, I've got a question from another MB100 winner, Chad Robertson, who's asked, what were the challenges your company experienced when you entered high-income countries versus low-income and middle-income countries, especially from a waste perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are sort of two thoughts that come to me, right? I mean, the punchline is that it has been absolutely meaningfully easier to operate and to scale in wealthier, bigger countries. And it's been the inverse as we go to smaller and or poorer. It just is what it is. I mean, I'm personally from Hungary, and it's been a real struggle setting up our business and operating it. We have an office there, but not actually on the ground operations for exactly that reason. It's poor and it's small. So, you know, the first part is the wealth, right? Depending on the type of capital you're accessing, the budgets just tend to become smaller, or multiple countries get grouped together. Like, for example, in Europe, all of Eastern Europe's budget is probably equal to one Western European country, but that has to be then split apart into multiple languages, zones, and so on. And so it's much harder to fund things that wouldn't be seen as core to the business's goals, right? So in smaller markets, you know, a lot of the budgets for brands go towards just coupons and promotions and things of that nature, while in the bigger countries, it goes towards, you know, the larger things where social enterprise can take part. One way to solve that, you know, that we've looked at has been looking at different models of operation. In Thailand, we entered as a nonprofit, and it's worked very well so far. So that's been a different method, accessing different capital bases. And then in entering other small markets, we're looking at more, how do we perhaps partner with a local actor who can carry out our work, but not have, you know, the cost basis that we would have if we enter and have to do everything around the protocols that we have. The other interesting sort of thing that's on capital is actually the compliance work, right? So we have seen it's not an absolute, but as the country gets typically smaller, the amount of paperwork disproportionately increases. You know, our joke is that, like in the US, when you have to do your end of year reports and taxes, it's like this much paperwork. In a smaller market, it's like this many, you know, 5-time copies, you know, apostilled, you know, and so on and so forth. And so it's also very important to be eyes wide open on what is the accounting and legal work that you're going to have to do to maintain operations in a market, and is there a way to go about entering a smaller market in a different way that doesn't put that burden on you. So for example, if you enter through an agent, then you don't have all that legal and accounting maintenance to do. And especially if you're domiciled in a or roll up into a, let's say like a US company, then you will have different practices that you have to bring over that you may not be able to, so you may not have to if you were just focusing on operating in one country. And also, of course, look at governance, right? That is a very important question as well in that process.
Thank you, Tom. A couple of questions have come in, so I'm going to ask the panelists to answer in the chat as we wrap up. We have 3 minutes left. So Emily, period poverty in a lot of countries is a systemic issue. Through your journey with Pantys, did you come across any insights on how to solve that? If you could put a couple insights in the chat, that would be great. And additionally, there was something, one second. And it was something around addressing, there was a mention of addressing menses and mental health. Can you all put a little bit of insight into how do you succeed sustainably despite stigma and cultural nuances? So I think this is both mental health and sexual and reproductive health. So we have I got 2 more minutes in the session before we hand it back to Tom. So can I ask each of you in 45 seconds just to give the audience a call to action? They've heard a lot of really wonderful insights in social enterprises and the issues you're working to address. What's your call to action to the audience? Alisée, let me start with you.
So depending on who is in the audience, my call to action is always just be part of it, like be part of any of these, the unbelievable founders in this panel. If you don't have the guts, the temperament of being a founder yourself, then join one of these companies, because the reality is we feel suddenly there's not much being done, but it's such a biased and skewed view. The reality is there's so much being done, but we need more brain power. We need more collective intelligence to go faster. So that would really be the call to action on my end.
Wonderful, thank you. Emily?
I would say find your passion, find your mission, both as a person and professional. I think that being an entrepreneur definitely has its ups and downs. So having that core within you really strong in terms of what you're trying to accomplish helps keep you grounded when things are going really well. It helps lift you up when things are more difficult. And looking for your passion point with pain points in the market can help really kind of unite those opportunities with your mission, your personal mission.
Fabulous, thank you. Tom?
I would say, really honor critical and feedback and negative moments like failures. We always have sort of this principle that whenever a failure occurs, we first ask, not how do we solve it, but what is the learning? Almost like the failure is a form of tuition. And there's a lot of value and optimism you can get from that, especially when you're dealing with, something that is overtly negative.
Super, and Nneka?
So 2 things. One, I just want to target, any entrepreneurs in the audience who are, or budding entrepreneurs who are letting perfection be the enemy of good. Those who are waiting for everything to be perfect to act. If the COVID-19 pandemic has taught us anything, it's that inaction has a price. And so I would say, find a community early on for the support, for the motivation, for the confidence you need to keep going and to keep moving. And then my call to action, I run a digital health company. So look, the reality is there truly is a massive digital divide. And I just want to call, partners who are out there, individuals who are out there, we need to work across the boundaries, across the aisles, more collectively to improve digital literacy and create the enabling digital ecosystems so that we can ensure a healthier, happier way of living for all, regardless of who you are or where you live across our globe.
Super, thank you. Well, let me thank Emily, Alisée, Nneka, and Tom for a fabulous discussion on scaling impact. And I will hand it over to Tom. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Payal. And yeah, just want to second that. Thank you to all our panelists. That was brilliant. There's so much in there for people to learn from. And Nneka, you gave me a great segue into the next session, which is all around partnering for impact and what is the key to successful collaborations. We're going to have another quick break and then we'll be back here soon for that. If you could please answer the quick poll that's about to pop up on your screens, that would be really helpful so we can get your feedback on that session and we'll see you back here soon. Thank you.